Erev Tov, the shir tonight is dedicated in memory of my mother-in-law, whose first yahrzeit is tonight. As a matter of fact, my wife is now in New York. The Hakamas Hamatzeva for my mother-in-law, may she rest in peace, Dvorah Chana Bas Binyamin, is going to take place in the greater New York area tomorrow on Yom Revi'i. So tonight's shir should be an Aliyas Neshama for my mother-in-law. We've covered most of what I want to discuss with regard to collateral damage. A very, very quick review. We had 3 hakafos, and then we got to Rav Shimon Shlomo Hirsch. The first hakaf was the Rambam, who justifies Shimon v'Levi because they were guilty of dinim, meaning they didn't condemn Chamor ben Shechem to death. The Rambam leaves open the question which the Ramban attacks him on, namely, why did Shimon v'Levi feel responsible to implement justice in this case? What business do they have? At the same time, the Rambam doesn't relate it all to the flip side, meaning Yaakov Avinu's critique of the actions of Shimon v'Levi. The Rambam omits any mention of that. The Ramban, as we saw, takes it a step further. He definitely admits to the Rambam's view that the people of Shechem, the entire city, were worthy of death, not necessarily because of dinim, because that's a positive mitzvah, but because of the violation of the Losa says, especially of Ritzicha and Arayis. So they were guilty, and therefore Damam Nishpach Kemayim. You remember the Ramban. Of course, the Ramban has to answer the question, why did Shimon v'Levi feel responsible for this? And his concept, the Ramban's concept, is Nekama. And the other members of Shechem, although they didn't actively perpetrate the crime against Dinah, but nevertheless, they were sort of like, if you could say in the broader sense, accomplices to the crime, because they were Sorim L'Mishmas. They were part of the overall community of Shechem and Chamor. They were, in a certain sense, B'nai Bris. They belonged to the same loyalty, the same nation. And therefore, the 2 brothers, Shimon and Levi, when they took Nekama against the entire city. And then we had the Maharal Miprag. Maharal Miprag drops any mention of Nekama and substitutes the concept of Milchama. And that in the context of Milchama, Shimon v'Levi fought a battle against the city of Shechem, the Ummah of Shechem, and it was like any Milchama, Ummah keneged Ummah. And as we pointed out last week, and it's going to come up today again, this could give fertile ground for an answer to the contemporary situation that we face with regard to Palestinians who are not necessarily perpetrating the acts of war of the Hamas, but nevertheless may indeed belong to the same Ummah. And we submitted that until we know otherwise, our group here, we'll call it the Alon Shvut group, would subscribe to the opinion that all of the Palestinians belong to the same nation. It's not 2 different nations. Hamas is not a different nation. And in the light of the Maharal's breakthrough of Ummah Keneged Ummah, we understand not only Shimon v'Levi in terms of their fighting a battle against the entire city of Shechem, but also perhaps an answer and a response to the question that's burning in our minds today about Palestinians in general and what we call collateral damage.
Sorry, is this the geographic Ummah as well? Because what happens to the West Bank, to Yehuda and Sharon?
Yeah, I don't think it has to do with whether you're in Gaza or Yehuda and Shomron. If you are part of a nation, then according to the Maharal Prague, once there's a justification for battle, for war, then we go to war against the entire nation. It
Right, but not in New
happens to be
York.
that
Or
one cousin lives in Jabalia and the other cousin lives in Al Azariah, in the West Bank. It doesn't matter either way.
right, but in New York or LA, you can't just kill them.
I don't know. We'll have to see about
okay.
that too.
Right.
All possibilities are open. So today's goal, after we finish up on Rav Shimshon for Hirsch, which we're, shall we say, halfway through, is to see what the contemporary poskim have to say and try to see if we can relate their Piskei Halacha in terms of collateral damage to the Parsha of Shimon Valevi in the various approaches of the Rishonim. So Rav Shimshon Fal Hirsch has a radical breakthrough here in the sense that Shimon Valevi were out to instill fear in the hearts of our enemies. And they took up the cherev, which normally is, shall I say, allotted to Esav. Esav was switching roles in the previous parsha. If you recall, when Esav displays some sort of emotion sensitivity to Yaakov, now it's the reverse, and Yaakov takes up the role of Esav. And in doing so, Shimon Valevi take the cherev of Esav. And you may recall at the end of last week, we discussed the pasuk of Hayadayim Yidei Akol Kol Yaakov Hayadayim Yidei Esav. Now, although Yaakov as a unique entity and the father of Klal Yisrael is a manifestation of Kol Yaakov, whether it be the Kol of the Bati Knesios, the Kol of the Bati Midrashos, but nevertheless, as Rav Hirsch points out, at times, it's dafka a different role that the descendants of Yaakov Avinu have to play, and that is to guarantee that those who attack us and those who initiate war against us will understand that we're not just pushovers, we're not just people who are victimized, but rather we can take up the cherev. And again, I can't begin to overemphasize how much Rav Hirsch's writings here in Parshas Vayishlach are relevant to our situation. And although Rav Hirsch begins his presentation, as we saw, with a critique, we call it thumbs down, against Shimon Valevi, nevertheless, in the second part of Rav Shimon Hirsch's presentation, it's thumbs up. And here's the last thing that we mentioned just a week ago. And if you happen to have the text, it's a paragraph on page 2, third paragraph from the top that starts with the word ulam. And here Rav Hirsch writes, and I quote, Hanimuk shehinia es Shimon Valevi v'amatara shesharfu elea, both the motivation and the goal, the agenda, the purpose that motivated them, hayu kiddoshim umutztakim. These were holy and justified. Haruach shepama b'libam, that which inspired them to move forward and take the cherev and the action of destroying Shechem, haisa hechrechis l'mishpacha, for this particular family of Yaakov was absolutely necessary. And Rav Hirsch points out that the act of Chamor against Dinah, against the Jewish people, the Bnei Yaakov, was an act of anti-Semitism directed specifically at a Jewish girl because she's Jewish. And now we have to turn the tables around and we have to demonstrate that the Jewish people are not to be taken advantage of. And he points out here very well that if we don't take a stand and a very harsh response, then these nations will come and attack us time and time again. And I say with great emotion that this speaks so much to our time period. we see that when we don't take a strong stand, when we let things go, then they come back to attack us with full force. And therefore, as Rav Hirsch would have it, the purpose and the goal of Shimon v'Levi are justified mutzdakim and kiddoshim. Again, he used the word kiddoshim deliberately here. However, says Rav Hirsch, even though we bless and we applaud the miniyim ves haruach, the motivation and the spirit, meaning the goal was certainly justified, but nevertheless, it seems that according to Rav Hirsch, they went too far. Let's read it inside. He says that the purpose of the actions of Shimon v'Levi Noadah was Lizkov es Komosa, to build up the stature of the Jewish people. Mitoch atzilut hadat. And now Shimon and Levi are taking up the cherev, and they're going to integrate that with the ruach of Klal Yisrael, the Kol Yaakov, in order to create a perfect integration of Yaakov together with Esav when necessary. However, Yaakov Avinu is not a happy camper, and he's going to curse Shimon and Levi. Why? Because it seems that the method that they used was not acceptable. They acted out of evra. Evra means out of kas, out of anger, without weighing and deliberating what should be the method to achieve the goal. And there may have been other possible methods to achieve that goal. But, says Rav Hirsch, at the same time that Yaakov Avinu harshly criticizes and even curses Shimon v'Levi, ach mevarech, he blesses them. So then the words of Yaakov, Rav Shimshon Hirsch finds, again, we're at the bottom of the end of of Parshas Vayechi, are a combination of both klola and bracha. Where does Rav Shimshon Hirsch see a bracha in the harsh words of Yaakov Avinu al Eresh Tvai when he is about to leave this world? Says Rav Hirsch, if you read the pasuk the way we should read it, and again I submit to you this is not the way the Ramban read the pasuk, but achalkein b'Yisrael, afitzim, I'm going to spread them out. We don't want Shimon v'Levi to be concentrated in one place because we want them to constantly be in direct encounter and touch with the other shvatim so that they can inspire the other shvatim, so that they can inject a certain spirit in the other shvatim. And on the one hand, they must all have a certain ruach chazakah, a very strong spirit, ha'era tamid, that will be always awakened, lichvod u'li'eud ha'musari ha'ruchani. Never should we squelch or ignore our Jewish unique destiny. Our identity is an identity of musar and ruach, and that always has to be guaranteed. Shetishaer kayemet u'pe'ilah. Mechaya, its goal is to breathe life into the people of Israel, umatzila b'chol chugei ha'am, and it will protect the people of Israel. But for that, we need sometimes to take up arms, to use the cherev of Esav. And he points out in a brilliant move that we find that Levi picks up the cherev again in the aftermath of the great sin, the catastrophe of Chet HaEgel. And Levi, es achiv lo hikir ves banav lo yada. once again using the cherev to uplift the people of Israel. And that means we have to cut out the idolaters, those who bring contamination to the people of Israel. And therefore, we have in Shimon v'Levi a great integration of both ruach, of yi'ud musari, of an ethical sensitivity, at the same time, a forceful hand, a cherev biyadam, in order to instill fear on those who rise up against us. And Rav Hirsch goes on to say that this perhaps is the concept of kur habarzel, when the Torah tries to give us a little bit of an insight and reveals just a tefach of why it is that God sends us into Golus. The Torah uses the term kur habarzel. During the course of Jewish history, we will see a process of siruf. What does siruf mean? The word siruf in Lashon Kodesh has two meanings. It could mean to join two things together, or it could mean a cathartic experience. And the catharsis of Golus is the Kura Barzel, which really justifies, according to Rav Hirsch, our chosenness. We are chosen as the Ama Nivchar because we combine and integrate these two elements together. We are not an Uma Nichnas. We are not a people that will just simply submissively subjugate ourselves to other nations. Adrabi says, as the Gemara calls us in Beit Zadaf Chafhei, Oz, Az Sheba Umos. We are Azus Panim. We were chosen because we stand up for ourselves, our beliefs, our spirit, our goals, our dedication to the Almighty. And our enemies are trying to undermine our dedication to the Almighty. Our enemies are in truth enemies of the Almighty Himself. And Nivcharnu, we were chosen L'Kli Sharet, L'Ashkachat Hashem. And therefore we go out to battle against our enemies with Hashkachat Hashem, with God protecting us. So just to summarize what we call Hakafa Dalid, and that is Rav Shimshon Fuller Hirsch, yes, the goal and the agenda of Shimon v'Levi are holy and justified. And we can't be without it. We need the Shimon, we need the Levi, Bekerev, Yaakov, Yisrael. And they will stand up to protect us. And they will instill fear in the hearts of our enemies. But sometimes we have to calm down and we have to curb our anger. When we respond to our enemies, we have to find the right way. And I assume, although this I didn't find explicitly at first, we have to be guided by the sensitivity of the Torah and of the leaders of Israel. And that's what Yaakov Avinu is criticizing here. You know, you're mevurach, you certainly are blessed. We're going to spread you around to inspire the people of Israel, and you'll always play that very crucial role in taking up the cherev of Esav. But the way that you go about doing it, out of a sense of anger, without thinking it out and calculating and deliberating over the repercussions, that's not something that we can accept. But ultimately, according to Rav Hirsch, and we ask the question, how does Rav Hirsch put his fingers, his thumbs, with regard to Shimon v'Levi? Is it thumbs up or thumbs down? And the answer is it's both. It's what I call, this is based on my study of philosophy, Hegelian dialectic. There's a thesis and there's an antithesis. The thesis is we are men of ruach. We are people of compassion and sensitivity. But the antithesis is that at times we have to take up the cherev and play the role of an Esav. And within this dialectic, we have to find the kosav hashlishi, the integration and the proper
The synthesis.
balance between these two polar extremes. And that's what Yaakov Avinu wants to instill in the hearts of Shimon and Levi. Yes, you are the leaders of Klal Yisrael. You will carry us. You will save us. But never lose sight of the broader picture. Never cut yourself off from the leadership of a Yaakov Avinu that will guide you in this very difficult and sensitive dialectic relationship between the Kol Yaakov, the sensitivity of a Jacob, and the Cherev of Yadayim Yidei Esav.
Sorry, just a biblical point, not to do with collateral damage, but Shimon seems to have failed the test. I mean, he doesn't distinguish between Shimon and Levi. But Shimon, in the canals of Shimon is seen in Parshas Balak, whatever, or Pinchas. The Shimon goes the other way. I'm saying he didn't manage to reach that synthesis.
Well, when you say kanos, I think that Shimon in Parshas Pinchas is, or go back to Balak,
Whatever,
is guilty of a crime of taiva.
Taiva, right? Okay, so it's not really.
I don't know if we want to introduce this, but we're trying to balance this between anger and picking up the cherev in order to defend Klal Yisrael, and that Shimon is great at that, and he comes through with flying colors in the episode of Shechem, and integrate that with the sensitivity, to use the terminology of Rav Shimshon Hirsch, the compassion, the morality of the descendants of Yaakov, and to find the proper balance. It's not enough for the goal to be correct, but the means to achieve that goal also have to be very well calculated. Let's now go on to the Orach Chaim HaKadosh. The Orach Chaim HaKadosh introduces what I call a revolution, and maybe you'll answer the question that I have on the Orach Chaim. He says, Hine b'nei Yaakov lo hoya b'daitom larog el bal avera. According to the Orach Chaim, the intention and the goal of Shimon and Levi was to destroy only the sinners. Ella, now where does he know this? Shekol b'nei ha'ir rotzu lamod b'peretz kenegdom lebal yehargu lachem asher al kein hargu midin rodef. According to the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, Rav Chaim ben Atar, the entire city rose up against them in battle. And we have a principle, Abol lahargu ashkem lahargo. I mean, that changes the entire perspective on the episode of Shimon and Levi. And I would even say that in the light of the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, the parsha of Shimon and Levi has nothing whatsoever to do with our question of collateral damage. We're talking about the entire city of Shechem rising up against the people of Yaakov, and that's called a rodef. And we apply the principle Ashkem Laharga. Where does the Orach Chaim know this from? The only thought that crosses my mind is that the Orach Chaim had to somehow justify Shimon and Levi. Why did they wipe out the entire city? So he comes up with this fantastical idea that the Bnei Ha'ir, Ratzu, Larog, they wanted to kill the nation of Israel. Al Kain Hargumi din Rodef. I mean, again, the obvious question is, so why does Yaakov curse out Shimon and Levi? That I don't know. But what bothers me here is, where did the Orach Chaim get this from? Is there a medrash? Is there some statement in Chazal that gives us a clue? Shekol b'nei ha'ir amdu b'peretz kenegdam, and therefore Shimon and Levi, who wanted to kill only those who were guilty, as the Orach Chaim says it, Lohoya b'daitam larag el bali avera, they will kill the entire city of Shechem like you kill a road. And Rabbosai, I want to come back to this Orach Chaim in about a week's time, in a different context whatsoever. And if the vote is in favor, I would like to pick up, we hope to finish tonight, collateral damage. I'd like to pick up the question of Milchama What is the mitzvah milchama? What's the difference between milchemes mitzvah milchemes reshus? And at the same time, pick up the concept of milchama against the terrorists. And do we see the terrorists A as a rodef, as rodfim, or B as a mitzvah milchama? So that's something that we can negotiate. In any event, before we go to the contemporary tshuva literature, I just want to point out to you that there's a very strange Masechta Sofrim / Mechilta in Parshas Beshalach. When I say slash, I mean the Mechilta is coming to expand on the Masechta Sofrim. Tani Shrab Shimbar Yochai Hatov Shebavoriks Kochavim B'Shas Milchama Harog. And again, if we take the approach of the Maral and we malbish, we put it on to this Masechta Sofrim comment, then it's very fascinating. We can even kill those enemies of ours who are not guilty. Hatov, they are the good guys. And who are these good guys? Well, we're going to see this in Rabbeinu Bachai in the parsha of Mitzrayim. Amongst the Mitzrim, there were some good guys that were Yorei Hashem, as we'll soon see. The Mechilta expands upon this. Paro takes Sheish Meos Rechev Bachur, and he goes out to battle against the people of Israel. The question is, where were these animals coming from? Sheish Meot Rechev Bachur? Obviously, they had horses. Mitzrayim is famous for its horses. But all these were destroyed during the Eser Makos. As the Pasuk says, Vayomas kol mikne Mitzrayim. V'im tomim mishal paro hoya. These were 600 horses that belonged to Paro. Halok far nemar. Hine yad Hashem hoiva b'miktecha Asher Besada. And according to the Mechilta, all the Mikneh was destroyed, including those that were owned by Paro. V'im tov mishal Yisrael, because the Mikneh of Klal Yisrael was not destroyed. He says, Gam Miknenu yelech imanu. Moshe Rabbeinu demanded that even the Mikneh of Klal Yisrael, the horses, etc., would go out of Mitzrayim. So there were no horses, Jewish horses, left in Mitzrayim. Elo shel mihayu shel hayorei es dvar Hashem. Imagine using that phrase as the Torah does to describe the Mitzrayim. Who are these yorei es dvar Hashem? When Moshe Rabbeinu warned them about the Makkah, they took their animals inside. They actually took Moshe Rabbeinu seriously, and they believed that God would destroy all the Mikneh, and so they protected the Mikneh by taking it inside. It was no longer Basada, and this was the very Mikneh that went out to battle against Klal Yisrael and the Sheish Meos Rechav Bachur. Says Rabbeinu Bachai. Kosav Rashi Zalbimi Hayu, and he goes through the whole Shaklavitaria. Could it have been Paros? Could it have been Yisrael's, and so forth and so on? But rather, it was min hayores dvar Hashem, min hamitzrayim, but hakol Yisrael. Unbelievable. The takola that Paro wanted to bring down the Jewish people is going to come through the Mitzrim, who are the Yorei Hashem. Mikan darshu Masechta Sofrim, says Rabbeinu Bachai, this is the source for Masechta Sofrim. So we see that the Mechilta in Beshalach is really the basis of the formulation of Masechta Sofrim. Amar Rab Shimbar Yochai, Tov Shev Mitzrayim, or Shev Mitzrayim, Harog B'Shas Milcham. Ki B'Shas Milcham Bilvad Mutar Lahargo. Says Rabbeinu Bachai, you're allowed to kill them, even though they are the Yorei Hashem, during a moment of Milchama. Ki me'achar shehu nilcham imach, uba kenegdecha lahargecha, af ato hashkem laharga. if these 600 horse riders, chariot riders, are coming to defeat the Jewish people, but if we have reason to believe that these goyim are, shall we say, the good guys, meaning they are Yorei Hashem, then if it's not Shas Milchama, we're not allowed to kill them. And what does it mean? That during Shas Milchama, we're going to apply the principle Abola Harga Hashkem Laharga. But now the question is, well, what about Kriyas Shalom? And the Rabbeinu Bachai says that even at the time of Milchama, we have to offer a peace offering. And even for the Zayin Amamim, where it says Lo Sachai Kol Neshama, but that's only after they refuse our peace offering. Is there a time in which we could go ahead and wipe out the other nation, even if it's not a Shas Milchama? Because up until this point, Rabbeinu Bachai says that this is a special heter b'Shas Milchama. We are battling one nation against the other. We destroy the other nation. But what about Shalom b'Shas Milchama? Comes along Rabbeinu Bachai with a revolution, a major breakthrough. We'll call it a landslide decision. If we have reason to prove that the enemies are rising up against the Almighty Himself, they rebel against God, like the Mitzrayim who said, you know what, we're going to destroy the Jewish people. We don't care about the divine being. We don't have any allegiance to the divine being. They are now considered as Ba Keneged HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, afilu shelo b'shas milchama mutar, we can kill them, even if it's not b'shas milchama. And here he quotes a pasuk in Amalek. What does it say in Amalek? Milchama Hashem b'Amalek. Why does God declare war on Amalek? Because Amalek is declaring war on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They are the rebellious nation against God. V'amitzrim kevan shero kvar b'makas b'choros. They witnessed all the makas, all the eser makas, including the last makkah, b'choros HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'atzmo v'choda u'b'chvodo hevi ha'makkah. The last makkah was brought about by Hashem. V'achshav chozrim al hayam. What's going on? This stupidity here. This is idiotic. V'achshav chozrim al hayam. What's going on? Don't they realize that God is fighting on behalf of the Jewish people? What says the Rabbeinu Bachai, there's something goes above logic. They wanted to battle against God. Why is God going to fight this battle for you? Because they are battling against God. And therefore, we're no longer going to find any justification. Well, these are the Yereim, they're on the highest top level of the Mitzrayim. No. If they, the Mitzrayim, decided to go out and destroy the Jewish people, they are rebelling against God, and it's Milchama Hashem. And we have to put them, or guarantee that they go to the bottom of the Yam. So therefore, we come back to the Masechta Sofrim, Hatov shebegoyim b'shas milchama harog. It means that b'shas milchama, we can say that after we're kori b'shalom, if they continue to run and pursue us, then habola hargu chashkem lahargu. Shalom b'shas milchama, we have to determine that they are fighting against the Almighty. And if they are fighting against the Almighty, then even if it's Hatov Shebagoyim, the best of the goyim, But why are they fighting against the Jewish people? Because in essence, they are battling against HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. And I wanted to add here one point I heard once from the Rav Zechron Livracha on the Nusach HaBracha after Megillah reading, and we also recite on Hanukkah. It says, Hadon es dinenu. And he said in the name of Reb Chaim that Reb Chaim was bothered by the grammatical form Hadon es dinenu. It should have said Adin. Adin means that I will judge. What is done? Says Reb Chaim, done means I'm a Baldin. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not an outside coach or a referee, a third party. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the party himself. It's not the nations against Klal Yisrael, it's the nations against HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, what I'd like to do now, because I have to balance my time here, is take a look at a number of tshuvas, contemporary tshuvas, of the Rabbanim here in Eretz Yisrael. Only one of them is still alive. But let's talk about Rav Shlomo Goren. He, as the chief rabbi of the army, and then later the chief rabbi of the state of Israel, had to address a myriad of questions that deal with milchama. And he authored a tshuva work, which is called Meshiv Milchama. Now, I have a little bit of a soft spot for Shlomo Goren. I got smicha from him. He said I could be a rav of a yishuv and so forth and so on, high-level smicha. But nevertheless, I can't accept what he writes, but maybe you'll accept it. And by way of introduction, I would say the following. We have to go to battle with our sense of sensitivity and compassion. The midah of Klal Yisrael is rachmanim. And the Gemara says time after time again that if we see that the people of Israel, a person in Israel, I should say, is not acting out of Rachmanus, then we should check out his yichus. He's not part of the Jewish people. And we have to be korei b'shalom, offering a peace offering before we go out to battle, even against the Zayin Amim. So Rav Goren is going to introduce into the picture the midah of Rachmanus. Al af mitzvahs halachima mefureshes b'Torah. We have three categories of Milchemes mitzvah. Mitzuvim anu lachus gam al ha'oyev. Again, I find these words of Rav Goren, they reverberate in a very powerful way. Mitzuvim anu lachus gam al ha'oyev. Shlolara gafilu b'shas milchama el bizman she kayam hechrech la'agana atzmit. If there's a need to survive and win the battle, then we destroy. But even if we're involved in battle, we always have to be asking ourselves, is this a necessary killing in order to achieve our victory? But the next 5 words are the key words that are relevant to us today. It's almost as if Rav Goren was addressing our question of collateral damage, and he says, please underline this if you printed it out, V'lo lifga b'uchlusia bilti lochemes. He's not going to differentiate between one nation, another nation. Are they B'nai Bris? Are they loyal citizens of the nation that is going to attack us? He wants to know one thing. Do we kill a person if it will not save the Jewish people? Are we allowed to kill someone who is Uchlusia bilti lochemes. He belongs to that population that's not battling us. And according to Rav Gaon, the answer is a flat no. And this is a manifestation of the element of lachus gamala oyev. We have enemies. But right now, at this particular moment, these enemies are not fighting against us. And if we kill them, we haven't saved ourselves. Or shall we say, if we don't kill them, they'll kill us. No, no, no. This is uchlusia she'ena lochemes. The asur, he says, bevada, it goes without saying, lifgar b'noshim v'yoladim. I mean, this tshuva could have been written today. She'ena mishtat v'milchama, the women and the children are not part of the milchama. Again, is that so? I don't know. You know, you can have a 5-year-old Palestinian with an RPG. That's how they train them. You can have a mother who raised her child just simply to kill Jews. Is that woman called Bilti Lochemes? I don't know. But if we take Rav Gaon at face value, in a literal translation, this is Uchlusia Bilti Lochemes. And Noshim Uktanim, Eino Mishtakfim B'Milchama. They are not combatants. Pratla Osa Milchamas HaMitzvah Shenetz Taviv Mefurish Tolos Chai Kol Neshama. Okay, the exception to the rule is going to be Zayin Amamin, where the Torah says Lo Sachai Kol Neshama. But the rule is that we allow for those that are not attacking us, the women and the children for sure, to stay alive. Interesting. Usually we say Lo Darshin in time of the Krah, but here's a case where Rav Gaon is Dorish time of the Krah. And he asks the question, why, in the case of Zayin Amin, were we commanded to wipe out the nations, men, women, and children? He says, because they, the 7 nations, were guilty of cruelty. I was surprised when I read this, because the Ramban Shita is, in Lo Sachai Kol Neshama, is because if they remain domiciled in Eretz Yisrael, they will influence us to worship Avodah Zarah. Because the Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah at that time was powerful. But I'd like to show you that amongst Rav Gaon's contemporaries, you can find an entirely different approach. Who was Rav Shaul Yisraeli? He was the Rosh Yeshiva of Merkaz Rav Kook. He was the head of the Beis Din. He was a Dayan and a Shofet. And he was an author of many works. And he writes the following. Yesh makom lepulat tigmol v'nakem neged tzorei Yisrael. We have to show them who's boss, and after they attack us, we have to avenge these people. Upula kazoti begetter milchemes mitzvah. He upgrades a tagmul and a nakam to the level of mitzvah of milchemes mitzvah. Now watch this. Again, if you printed it out, please underline the next 2 lines. V'chol asonu pekesh korela porim ulabale brisa v'liyodeim heim sharivim lezeh. Any damage or chas v'shalom killing, right? Don't lose any sleep on that, because these are the Bali Brisa. Again, that concept that we saw hinted at in the Ramban, but now it plays central role. Heim avonim yiso. If they support the terrorists, if they support the enemies that rise against us, then we are not responsible for any pega that happens to them. And not only that, he says, let's not be inhibited. Ain't shum chovel limanei mipulas tigmol. If you're afraid that you might be pogea in the, what do we call them, chafimi pesha, those who are innocent, don't even mention that. Don't even take that into consideration. And this concept will come to the fore in Rav David Lior. Take a look at Rav Lior, number 14. He writes, B'milchamtenu, Itim shafcha rachmanut shel al oyev l'chachzirut klapei chayalenu. He says very often the mercy that we display towards our enemies is in truth cruelty towards our own soldiers. Shenaflu b'krav. Sometimes we are so careful about the oyev that we lose soldiers. Why? Because nimnu mipagia b'chlusi azrachit. They are inhibited because they don't want to battle against the citizens that live in that country. Shestira me'achorei gaba kochos tzava shel ha'erev. Mom is talking about Hamas, what we call the human shields. And if you turn to page 4, he continues it. He says, "Mutar mitzara mitgonen litkof gam uchlusi azrachit." He's going to the other extreme. We had Rav Goren who's saying, "Don't you dare raise a finger against uchlusia ezrachit," and we had an opposite view of Rav Shaul Yisraeli that these are the Bnei Abris, and therefore they'll suffer the consequences of any ason v'pega. But now we have another view of Rav Lior, which is the most extreme on the other side, the exact opposite of Rav Goren, and he's saying that we should not have any compassion whatsoever. And to defend ourselves, we will attack the Uchlusia Azrachit. Mitzad ha'am hatokef. What does it sound like? Ha'am hatokef. If I was giving you a test on the material that we studied, you would fail. What does this sound like? What does this remind you of? Who said this idea? Way before Rav Lior. That we will kill the Echlusiyah Azrachit because they are part of the Am HaTokef.
The Maral.
The Maral, excellent. V'lachein mutal etzva Yisrael laharim bayit sheyesh bo mechablim gam in nimtzaim b'toch ezrachim o nashim v'yeladim. The Rav Goren said, Chas v'sholem, should we touch one of the women or the children? And Rav Lior has a scenario in which we will destroy the women and children because they're in the same house as the Oye. Wow. I mean, if you need to see a sugya in halacha that has a broad spectrum of opinions, like, for example, I think all the time of defining death. What defines death? And you'll have, on one side of the fence, you'll have Rav Moshe Tendler, and then on the other, and Rav Moshe Feinstein, and then you'll have you'll have all the extremes, everything. Here's another example. Rav Goren is talking about emphasizing lachus al ha'oyev. Rav Goren is talking about the fact that you don't even dare to entertain the idea of touching women or children. Rav Goren is talking about the idea that chaf mi pesha, ezrachim, who are not part of the battle against them, are not to be touched. Don't even dream of it. And on the other extreme, you have Rav Lior, who's saying that in our military enterprise or our combat, we should not be inhibited by the fact that there are ezrachim, ba'chlusiyah, that are going to be nifka, that are going to be damaged or destroyed. Forget it. Don't even think of that. Nothing should inhibit us. We are out there to destroy because we are fighting a milcham. Now, I was curious about this tshuva of Rav Avram Shapiro. I knew him. I don't know if you knew him. He was the Rosh Yeshiva of Merkaz Rav Kook, and he was the chief rabbi for the Ashkenazim. A wonderful, wonderful person. Sheila. He was asked the following question in an interview. Ma dina shel uchlusiyat oyev ezrachit b'yet hamilchama. Exactly our question. What is the din regarding the population of our enemies, but the civilians during the war? Ha'im yesh mitzad hadin heter lifgoa ba? Can we say that in our defense and our protection, to slow down the terrible losses amongst our soldiers, we should not be inhibited and we be allowed to destroy the uchlusiyah ezrachim? Tshuva. Kol od she'ein sakana mamashit l'chayaleinu. If at this point in time, compassion for the uchlusiyah ezrachit would not in any way danger our chayalim, ein heter lifgoa b'nefesh, v'af lo b'rechus. Ulam, kasher hasakanai muchashit, when we're in a dangerous situation, harei yesh lizkor she'al kafa maznayim, a chiddush of Rabbi Avram Shapiro, ein omeres rak yechidat halochemet mul ha'chlusiyah ezrachit. In a moment of sakana, we're not going to put on two sides of the tug of war the uchlusiyah ezrachit and the chayalim of that particular chidah, of that battalion, but it's much more than that. Why? Because ibudah shel yechidah achat ochelet menu alul lifgoa b'marechet hamilchama kula. If we lose chas v'shalom one brigade, it could have a powerful repercussion on the entire war. It could change the results of the war. Al kain, and therefore, kasher nidrash, kasher sakana gluya la'ayin, we're in a dangerous situation. Ein makom limdod. You might come along and say, well, we're going to kill 100 ezrachim of the oyev in order to save one chayal. We're going to give back 1,000 terrorists to get Shilat back. Oh, no. What's at stake here is not just one chayal, but the entire war is at stake. And we're not going to start making calculations. It's 100 of them and only one of us. But rather, alulim l'shalem et mechir milchama. The ezrachim of a country that's at war with us will suffer and pay the price of this war. Yesh b'zeh halacha brura b'Rambam b'Hilchot Milchama v'chayvim latzil chayav shel kol chayal Yehudi. Honestly, I don't know where this Rambam is in Hilchos Milchama, but I ask myself, where does Rav Shapiro fit in our spectrum? He doesn't say a word about women and children, but he is talking about uchlusiyah ezrachit, which would include the women and the children. We cannot lose and forfeit and endanger one single chayal. He's very similar to Rav Lior. The only difference, perhaps, between Rav Shapiro and Rav Lior is that Rav Lior emphasizes the idea of an am. There's an am hatokev. And if the am hatokev includes mechablim, then we'll do whatever we have to, and we'll defeat and destroy even the ezrachim. Like the case where the mechablim are hiding in a house, we will kill the human shields. And I would dare say that according to Rav Lior, we could bomb a hospital even, if need be, if they're being used as human shields. Not so according to Rav Goren, for sure not. To kill innocent men and women and children. According to Rav Yisraeli, it really boils down to the question of whether or not these people are B'nai Bris. And according to Rav Shapiro, it all depends on whether there's a sakana mamashit. Rav Lior is not looking for a sakana mamashit, an immediate danger. He's looking for a milchama, and therefore mutar la mitgonen litkof gam achlusiya zrachit mitzad am. It's a milchama, and they're going to have to suffer the consequences. Now, you heard of Rav Yaakov Ariel. He has a yeshiva in Ramat Gan. Oh, he's also quite famous for the Machon Hamishkan at the Kotel. You know what I'm talking about? I never was there.
That one is Rav Yaakov Ariel is Ramat Gan. Rav Yisrael Ariel is the Machon HaMikdash.
Yeah.
Oh, this is brother?
I think so. I don't think that's so close.
Okay.
Rav Yaakov Ariel is the Rav of Ramat Gan.
Yes, and Rav Yisrael Ariel is the Machon HaMikdash. They're all very clever, the Ariel brothers.
So this Rav Yaakov Ariel is, in addition to being a Rav in Ramat Gan, also has a yeshiva, very, very prominent Hesed yeshiva in Ramat Gan. And he writes in Tchumin, Lo rak lochamim alulim lipaga b'milchama. Not only are we fighting a battle against those who are lochamim, who are combatants, but elegam anashim neutralian sheniklu'u l'stei hakra. You have neutral people. I mean, he's going even beyond the concept of am, beyond the concept of bnei bris. He sounds like he's talking about neutral people, maybe the Red Cross. I don't know if the Red Cross is neutral, or maybe journalists, if there are any journalists that are neutral. Sheniklu'u l'stei hakra. In a certain sense, I think Rav Ariel is going even further than what we saw until now. So let's, Rabbosai, wrap it up with the following. We see in the Ramban a certain tendency towards limiting our collateral damage, limiting. And if we're involved in Nekama, then we can only do Nekama against the Baalei HaBris. And I think in that sense, Rav Shol Yisraeli is very similar to the Ramban, as we pointed out before, because the language of Rav Shol Yisraeli is Pega leporim ulebalei brisam uli aldeim. On the other hand, the Ramban elsewhere demands kriyas shalom even in a milchemes mitzvah, which sounds a lot like Rav Goren, who says mitzuvim anu lachus gam al oyeh. Now, in terms of men who are not combatants, and in terms of women and children who are not fighting against us, it really boils down to what I call Rove poskim. Again, I can't say it's Rove. I can only tell you about these poskim. But amongst the poskim that we have here, we have Rav Shol Yisraeli, and we have Rav Avram Shapiro, and we have Rav Lior and Rav Ariel. They all seem to be saying that collateral damage is not our inhibition. It's not something that should be in any way stop us from going towards Nitzachah. And even the Echlusiyah Ezrachit She'einam Lochamim Negdenu, we shouldn't be inhibited. In the middle, we have perhaps the compromise shita of Rabbi Avram Shapiro. And Rav Shapiro wants to suggest that a lot of it depends upon what he calls sakana mamashit. He says, Ein lifga b'nefesh kol od she'ein sakana mamashit. Now, it seems to my mind, and I'd like to hear your response, that the pu'ulot of Tzal today are very similar to this middle shita of Rav Shapiro, which means that it's very important for the ktsuna, for the mfakdim, to clarify to the soldiers that if there's any danger to their lives, Don't be inhibited. We will not sacrifice our chayalim for the sake of the uchlusiyah Ezrachit. But on the other hand, we will do everything that we can to prevent loss of life amongst the women and the children. That seems to me, and please slug me up if I'm wrong, to be more or less the mediniyut, the military program or policy of the state of the IDF. But I would say that these tshuvas, and especially the tshuva of Rav Goren, are a bit outdated. I don't think that they had any clue about the power of Hamas. And again, I don't want to scare anybody because it scares myself. I can't sleep at night. But they talk about the entire Gaza underground city, 70 meters down, is all headquarters of Hamas. I mean, the headquarters are Sheba, whatever. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know how that's gonna. And now, if they give them 5 days, I mean, I don't know what's going to be during those 5 days. I mean, so please, if I can have, before I go on next week to a different topic, maybe to the topic of Milchama,